We've all heard it, right? The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. That's the standard model, what most of us learned in school. But what if that entire timeline is fundamentally wrong? Today, we're going to break down the case for a much, much younger Earth. So let's just put the big question right on the table. What if the standard model of billions of years is just incorrect? And what if the Earth is actually thousands of years old, not billions? I mean, we're not talking about a small correction here. This is a complete rethinking of our cosmic history. For this explainer, we're drawing our information directly from two key thinkers in this field. On the science side of things, we'll be looking at the work of astrophysicist Dr. Jason Lisle. And for the scriptural analysis, we're turning to Hebrew scholar Dr. Bill Barrick. Our goal is simple, to lay out their arguments as clearly as possible. Now, just so we can all grasp the scale of what we're talking about, take a look at these two timelines. On one side, you have the conventional view, billions of years. On the other, the view we're exploring, roughly 6,000 years. The difference is just staggering, and it really sets the stage for the arguments we're about to dive into. Okay, let's get right into it, starting with the scientific evidence. And we're going to begin with what is maybe the single most common objection raised against a young universe. First, a super quick refresher so we're all on the same page. A light year. It sounds like a measure of time, but it's not. It's a measure of distance. It's the absolutely mind-boggling distance that light travels in one single year. And that leads us straight to the famous starlight problem. I mean, think about it. If a galaxy is, say, 10 million light years away, shouldn't its light take 10 million years to get to us? So how on Earth could we see it in a universe that's only 6,000 years old? This seems like a massive, unjumpable hurdle. So how is this problem addressed? Well, Dr. Lisle points us to a pretty surprising source, Albert Einstein. Einstein's theory of relativity showed that time isn't absolute. It can flow differently for different observers. And here's the key. We have only ever measured the round-trip speed of light, never its one-way speed. According to physics, the one-way speed is something we just have to assume. It's a convention. Dr. Lisle proposes a convention where light traveling from distant stars toward Earth arrives instantaneously. It's a wild idea, I know, but it is perfectly consistent with the laws of physics. And if it's correct, it would completely solve the starlight problem. But it's not just about starlight. Dr. Lisle also points to other clocks in the universe that seem to be ticking way too fast. For instance, we find carbon-14, which decays relatively quickly, inside diamonds that are supposed to be billions of years old. It just shouldn't be there. Then there's the Earth's magnetic field. It's decaying so quickly that it couldn't have been around for billions of years. You've also got planets like Jupiter, which are still radiating way more heat than they receive from the sun. They should have cooled off by now. And finally, those beautiful spiral galaxies should have wound themselves up into a blur if they were truly ancient. The argument is that each of these points to a much younger cosmos. Okay, let's shift gears now from the cosmos to the text. For many who hold this view, the science we just talked about is really just confirming what they believe is the clear message of the Bible itself. And this verse, right here, is absolutely central to the whole scriptural argument. According to Dr. Barrick, this isn't just a random verse, it's part of the Ten Commandments. He sees it as God's own commentary on the Genesis creation account. It directly ties the 6 days of creation to the human week. The logic goes, if the creation days were actually long ages, then the command to rest on the 7th day wouldn't make much sense. At the heart of this entire debate over the text is one single Hebrew word, yom. It's the word translated as day. But the million-dollar question is, what kind of day is it talking about? Dr. Barrick argues that the context makes it crystal clear. First, each of the 6 days is defined by the phrase, and there was evening and there was morning. That sounds an awful lot like a normal 24-hour cycle. He also points out that the Hebrew says one day, not the first day, as if it's setting the definition right from the start. And on top of that, you have Jesus himself, who talks about Abel's death happening from the foundation of the world, which seems to place humanity right at the beginning, not billions of years down the road. Now, one of the famous attempts to harmonize the Bible with an old Earth timeline is known as the gap theory. This is the idea that there's a huge, undefined period of time, maybe millions of years, that exists right between the first and second verses of Genesis. The whole theory really hangs on how you interpret verse 2. Did God create the earth and it was formless and empty? Or, as the gap theory suggests, did the earth become formless and empty, implying there was a previous creation that got destroyed? Well, Dr. Barrick argues that the Hebrew grammar itself actually refutes this idea. He explains that verse 2 is a disjunctive clause, which basically acts like a background description for verse 1, not a new event in the story. And, maybe most importantly, the Hebrew verb used there, hatha, means was. It's describing a state of being. There's a different Hebrew verb that means became, and that's just not the word that's used here. All right, so now that we've looked at the primary scientific and scriptural arguments, let's tackle a few other common objections that always come up in this conversation. Okay, this is a big one. The fossil record. It's a major piece of evidence for an old Earth. Fossils aren't just mixed up randomly. They're found in these really distinct layers. So how does the young Earth model account for this very orderly sequence? The answer proposed is what they call a flood order. The idea is that in a global flood, you'd naturally expect things to be buried based on where they lived. So creatures on the ocean floor would get buried first, in the lowest layers. As the water rose, less mobile creatures on land would be buried before the more mobile ones, like mammals and humans, who could escape to higher ground for a while. So in this view, the order in the fossil record isn't about millions of years of evolution, it's about the sequence of burial during one massive catastrophic event. Here's another classic question. If all the land animals came off the ark in the Middle East and spread out from there, why do we have unique ecosystems, like kangaroos being found almost exclusively in Australia? This model explains it with a post-flood ice age. The thinking goes like this. After the flood, animals start spreading out. Marsupials who carry their young in pouches could migrate pretty efficiently. They reached the outer edges of the continents, crossing land bridges that existed because of lower sea levels during the Ice Age. They made it to Australia, and then the ice melted. Sea levels rose, and Australia became an island, protecting the marsupials there before slower, more competitive mammals could arrive. An interesting fact, this also explains why we find marsupial fossils in other places along that migration path, like South America. So as we start to wrap this up, it becomes pretty clear that this whole debate isn't really about individual pieces of data. It's about the foundational framework you use to interpret that data in the first place. And this quote from Dr. Lizzle really gets to the heart of the matter for those who hold this view. It reframes the whole discussion. It's not about being popular or accepted by the scientific establishment. It's about a question of ultimate authority. So here's the crucial point they make. Everybody, and I mean everybody, approaches the evidence with a set of starting assumptions, a worldview. And the debate, from their perspective, boils down to which authority you start with. Do you use the presuppositions of modern science to interpret the Bible, or do you use the Bible as your foundation to interpret the scientific evidence? And that really leaves us with a final question, a question for you to think about. What are your own foundational assumptions? How does the framework you start with, whatever it might be, shape your conclusions about our world, its history, and what you believe is truly possible?